Can you imagine having a net worth of $10 million? I mean, for many, it would appear the only way is either marrying or possibly winning the lottery. But the reality is, if you have the right mindset and you understand the numbers, it's a very different story. And so today, what I want you to learn and leave with is the fact that the journey to become a Deca millionaire, that means somebody that's worth 10 million, is not as difficult as you may believe. Now, your goal may not be to become a Deca millionaire. It may be, and if it is, great. But if it's not, the same rules apply, even if your goal is to have 500,000 or $1 million, or even to have enough money that you can retire comfortably. The insight that you're going to learn today is just getting the right mindset, as well as understanding the numbers you need to know, and the rest is history. The podcast on becoming a Deca millionaire turned out to be longer than I had anticipated. And so I decided to divide it into two different parts. Partly because I want you to really focus in on what I teach you this week so you'll be ready for next week. And I didn't want to overwhelm you. I also know you're busy. You're busy like me. You got a lot going on. And so I don't like these to be too long because we all have limited amount of time. So you're going to love both episodes and both cover different elements. Today, we're diving into the first two insights. And then next week, we'll dive into the next two. So let's dive into part one. Hi, I'm Annette Bau, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. I encourage you to go and take our financial health checkup. You can go to themillionaireininsider.com/FHC. The financial health checkup is just like a medical health checkup. You go to the doctor, you typically get an annual exam or an exam every 2 years to see that everything's okay. But most people don't realize that when it comes to your finances, the same thing is true. And this checkup is going to give you insight on what you're doing right, your gaps, and what you need to do to make sure you don't have problems in the future. So again, themillionaireininsider.com/FHC. Today's free resource is our millionaire mindset, and it clearly goes along with becoming a Deca millionaire because probably the most important thing if you want to become a millionaire or a multimillionaire or a Deca millionaire or even a centi millionaire is you got to learn how to think like a millionaire. Millionaire mindset is all about that. You can go to themillionaireininsider.com/SMMG. Again, themillionaireininsider.com/SMMG. The insight I share in this resource is literally 35 years of research, and it dials in what you need to do so you can at least get in the mindset of accumulating the wealth you desire. So again, themillionaireininsider.com/SMMG. If you want to learn how I became a millionaire, which dives into a lot more insights, you can go to themillionaireininsider.com/5, and I'll link to that in the show notes. Gives you a lot more insight. You know, it's kind of a lot of the things that impacted my journey. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireininsider.com/65. All materials and intellectual property are copywritten by themillionaireseries.com. This information is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or to provide any investment, financial, tax, retirement, planning, or healthcare advice. By accessing this material, you agree to hold millionaireseries.com and its affiliates harmless for results achieved or not achieved. Today, we're diving into becoming a Deca millionaire, which is a net worth of at least 10 million. As I mentioned, it may seem really difficult, if not impossible, and I get it. Some of the insight you're going to learn from these 4 insights I'm going to give you are going to be game-changing. So the first one is you've got to learn how to think like a millionaire. Now, that kind of goes without saying, right? But the more I started really thinking about that. I was at a conference and I asked this woman, how can I do the most to give back? And I was thinking that I needed to teach people at the level they were at. She's like, no, 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 no. You need to teach people how to think like a millionaire. And at the time I was like, well, that's kind of obvious. But then the more I dove into it, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, what brilliant advice. And this is what I found. What happens is, let's say you start and you don't have a lot of money, right? You get a job and you start making money. What happens with some people is they make money, which I'm just here to tell you, if you've ever been a top producer, making money is such a dopamine hit because you have all these people telling you how smart you are. And I can remember I was number one in the world. In fact, I've been a top producer for over 22 years in my career. And I can remember when I don't know if I was number one, number two, number three. I was up there, way up. And I think one year I was number one. But the bottom line, this is a situation. Everyone is telling you how smart you are. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm not that much smarter than I was last year. I just made a lot of money. But everyone wants a piece of you. You're getting all these trips, these awards, everything. It's unbelievable to describe. So you have this high that's literally a dopamine high. It's like rewarding that pleasure center in your brain. And then what happens is, a lot of people get in that dopamine loop where they make money. And then what happens is they start spending it. And they spend it either to look like they have money or to spend it in their business to make more. Now, I understand you have to spend money to make money. But the problem is they never get out of that loop. And as I started doing more and more research, and I started even looking at the research that I have done, what I realized is the difference of those of us who are wealthy and have accumulated a multi-million-dollar net worth is the fact that we can have that dopamine high from earning money, and then we can go to more of a drip, which is the accumulation of wealth. And that's much more internal. Like when I achieved my net worth goal, which was literally 18.9 times what it was when I was a top producer in the top of the world, no one told me how smart I was. No one was giving me accolades. No one was giving me any attention. So you have to be able to go from making money to accumulating wealth. Now, the other thing you got to do when it comes to thinking like a millionaire is that, most people think like if they had 10 million, oh my God, what I would do, right? But what you don't realize is if you set your assets up properly and now you have a $10 million net worth, it's not like you have $10 million just sitting there to spend. I mean, some people do, but people that are smart with their money and thinking like a millionaire, you've got it invested. So it's invested in real estate. It's invested in stocks. It's invested in different assets. The issue is that you're more focused in on the accumulation of those assets, the growth of those assets, which typically is not anything to do with cash flow, right? That's what's so interesting is that most people think like, oh, I just want to be a millionaire. And a lot of people think like they want to earn $1 million and that makes them a millionaire. To be a millionaire, to have $1 million that you've accumulated, I mean, people disagree, but it takes somewhere between probably 3 to 5 million to accumulate 1 million. Now, if you do it more strategically, it's easier to accumulate that than, say, for instance, having to make 3 to 5 million, meaning you could maybe make 2 million or 3 million, and then the other you can get from appreciation. So that is true. But at the same time, it takes a significant amount of earned income to accumulate that much money. And if you look at a lot of people making $1 million, a lot of them, and I know, they're not even taking hardly any of a salary. And it's so interesting because, everyone brags about making $1 million or 10 million. Making 10 million, clearly, that's a huge milestone. But accumulating 10 million is like 10 times harder because you've got to take all that money that you've earned and then pay the taxes. And then whatever's left over after your living expenses is what you're going to use to accumulate it. So it's just so interesting how different that is. But you got to think that way. And the average millionaire makes like 77,000. Maybe it's gone up, but it's not a lot because we're not focused in on income. We're focused in on the accumulation of wealth. And this is the key. So I'll use an example. Like, let's just say, for instance, last year, I make $100,000 or $200,000, whatever the number is. But in my portfolio, it's appreciated by 1.5 million. See, as long as I don't take that, that's not income. It doesn't show up. That is money that is growing. And see, that's what a lot of people don't get is the fact that you're like, you think because somebody's net worth has increased by, let's say it's 1.5 million, because they $10 million net worth, it's increased by 1.5 million. Now you're like, oh my God, they got all this money to spend. Typically what they're going to do is they're not going to spend it, because as long as they keep it in those assets and it's growing, there's no tax due. Now, granted, it is capital gains tax, but as I've explained in previous episodes, capital gains tax can trigger AMT. It can trigger other aspects of putting you in a higher tax bracket. There's a lot of other ramifications that go along. That's why you have to really be working with a qualified CPA who can really look at your numbers. But the first thing you got to do is you got to understand how to think like a millionaire. And that includes really getting those dopamine loops intact. I get my dopamine loops from hiking. I get it from spending time with my close friends and my family, my husband, my kids, most times my kids, if they're not beating me up, right? Because I know nothing, right? It's so funny. My husband goes, do you think if we said to our son that collectively how much experience we have, if he would listen to us? I go, no, he doesn't want to know what we think. And I kind of think it's funny because, part of it is, and it's heartwarming, and at the same time, it's so frustrating. Part of it is, really trying to prove himself, really trying to do, his thing. And I love that. I love the fact that he's really looking at different things, and he is listening, because he was going to take a job in financial services where he had a lot of upside, no guarantee, but a lot of upside. And I love that. But then it was really interesting because the commission structure of what he was going to get was all up front. And I said, what about the fact that every year you're going to be starting over? We didn't really have a big conversation about it, but he's like, yeah, that's a consideration. And then the next thing I knew, he said he has a new opportunity that's still in the lines. It's a little bit off of financial services, but still a little bit in that field. He has an opportunity with a huge organization that he would have not only a base plus benefits plus 401k. So he doesn't now have to worry about all the things that go on to starting as an entrepreneur and having the LLC and setting up your own retirement. It's just a lot, right? He gets like 85% of the commission up front, and then he gets renewals every single year. So now he's going to earn not only X amount up front, meaning earned income, but he's also going to have renewals. And those renewals are like 25 to 30%, and there's an 85% renewal rate. So it's very high. So he is listening at some level. It's just that he's not typically sitting down and saying, Mom, what do you think? Or Dad, what do you think? And so it's kind of interesting. But the key is, if you want to become a millionaire or a Deca Millionaire or a centi millionaire, you got to think like a millionaire. In one of the episodes, and if I can find it, I'll link to it, but I talk about what people that are millionaires do versus Deca Millionaires versus centi millionaires. Most centi millionaires, they have had businesses bought and sold. Deca Millionaires, our focus has been more on real estate and investments. And then just regular millionaires are more just accumulation of wealth, having a good job and then making money from it. So again, not a right or a wrong, just something to be aware of. The second one, as far as becoming a Deca Millionaire, I think is really managing your mindset and your emotions. And I truly think this is one of the most challenging things for all of us who are multimillionaires. And I'm going to explain this because it was like eye-opening to me when I got it. As a multimillionaire, one of the things we do really well is there's a situation. We got the situation that occurs, and then, we think something about it. And a lot of times we have a belief that triggers a thought. So we have a thought, and then we go right from that thought to what do we need to do? What action do we need to take to get the result? And what we ignore is the feeling. And I cannot tell you how many millionaires fall into this. And it's not healthy, and I'm not saying I recommend it, but it is so prevalent. And I think it's why so many millionaires have health problems, heart problems, cancer, diabetes, strokes, you name it, is because we have all this unprocessed emotion. The interesting issue, combining that with being a woman, is, kind of the stereotype of a successful woman, like the rich bitch or the wealthy woman. You got to be aggressive, you got to be cutthroat, you got to do all these horrible things. It's really interesting how that is clearly played a factor in who I am. And I think, I had a pretty tough childhood. It was not a great childhood. Not only was it not great from a perspective of like literally major bullies, which I'm sure, some people on the other end probably thought I was a bully in high school and junior high, but just not an ideal childhood, not like one that you're like, oh, I just really want to replicate that. But I think it did toughen me up to where when I got out into my career, I can remember days where I thought, there's just no way I can do this. And I thought, if I can put up with what I put up with, both from my family as well as from just the bullying at school, I can do anything. And so I do think that toughened me up, but I also think, it came at a price, right? And I think it's taken me, here I am. And it was probably when I became 50 that I really started doing a lot of work on my emotions. I can remember thinking, okay, once I was a millionaire, everything was going to be great. And then I can remember, second million, third million, fourth million, somewhere between 5 and 7 million saying, okay, not much is changing. If I don't change, if I don't dial this in and I don't start working on those inner issues, those emotions, nothing's changing. Another million is not going to solve my problems. And thankfully, I did that. And I've done it through different venues, a lot through therapists, but also through coaching and things like that. And it's really had such a dramatic impact, because now it's not saying that situations don't bother me, because now that I'm starting to process my emotions, something happens and I can really process it. I was recently at a conference. I really screwed up. Like, I royally screwed up. I screwed up because I went to the conference not having any idea who was in the audience. And that's just not a good thing to do. I mean, it's not a good thing to do, especially if you're talking about money. The issue is, when you have money, you've got to be sensitive, because a lot of people have their own story going on. They have their own issues going on. And a lot of those things can really get triggered. I was so focused on asking my question that, I kid you not, like, whenever you're speaking in front of a group, I'm just going to give you, this is $1 billion nugget. And when I say I failed at this, it's embarrassing. Like, I always get somebody to record me when I ask a question, because I can't remember everything I asked and everything they said. And when I went back and watched that, I'm like, what did I do? So what I did is I almost missed the conference because one of my clients died. The person goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And I go, yeah. And then I immediately went to, yeah, but, I worked with her for a long time. Like, it was not a big deal. And what I left out is the fact that her death was so long awaited, and it was actually a blessing. Well, that is something you cannot leave out of a story like that. I mean, I'm sure some people were thinking, oh my gosh, she doesn't even care about her client, which is nothing further than the truth. But, it was just one of those things where I was so concerned about getting my question asked, and there were so many people wanting to ask questions, that I was focused on that. I wasn't where I needed to be. That was the first thing. And then the second thing was the audience, which is from some powers that be. I mean, the audience did not have money. And so then somebody getting up and asking questions about, what can I be doing to get these people to stop getting off this dopamine loop? I mean, it clearly triggered people. Now, I don't have as much problem that triggered people, because maybe it'll trigger some people that'll actually do something about it. But it was the fact that you got to be super careful when you're in front of any audience or anyone, that you're just sensitive to that. I was so focused in on asking my question that I wasn't really focused in on the audience. And I think that was a big mistake. But then, of course, what I do is, then I reanalyze it, rehash it, beat myself up. Oh, I should have done this. Oh, I know better than that. Those are things that you just got to learn how to manage. One of the things I really focus in on is getting quiet, really just getting clear, and then separating out my emotions versus theirs. Because what I came to after I was able to calm my primal brain down is the fact that I'm more concerned about a lot of these women and their financial future than they are. And that's a problem. And that's where I said, I've got to start focusing in on people who are really at a point where they're already doing some of the work. They're really motivated to do it, as compared to women who are just in that spiral of making money, spending money, or broke and just staying broke. So again, you got to get clear on that. Managing your emotions, managing your mindset. When things don't go right or things don't go well, being able to step up and own it and process it. That's something that, is probably still my weakest link, is really being able to process my emotions and my feelings, and to not act from a limbic standpoint, because I think it's something that it's so easy, especially even right now with what's going on. You see so many people who are making decisions and supporting things, and they don't even have the facts. And it's because people don't want the facts. People want to support what they want to believe. And that's something that I think it requires a lot of emotional intelligence. And it's something that requires a lot of emotional energy. It requires a lot of maturity. And it's something that to this day I'm still working on. But it is critical as far as becoming a multimillionaire, because you've got to, at some point, you can't let your emotions run you, because typically what happens with people that do that, it's not you can't, it's just you have a roller coaster of life. You got money, then you don't. You got money, then you don't. You're happy, you're not. You're happy, you're not. It's just a vicious cycle. So managing your emotions, number 2, is so important. Just to recap on this conference, what I came out with there is I'm responsible for sharing insight and value so people can do something about it, but I'm not responsible for the actions or inactions they take. That, for me, was priceless. So I hope you enjoyed part 1. Now, part 2, which we'll dive into next week on continuing the journey to become a Deca Millionaire, I give you the exact formula that you need to use regardless of what your goal is, and how I simplified the process from, before I was a millionaire to my entire journey all the way to a Deca Millionaire and beyond. And what's great about the formula that I'm going to share with you is that it works regardless of what your goal is. So I'll look so forward to seeing you next week. If you love the content of this podcast, please follow and subscribe to our channel so you get notified of episodes, and also give us a 5-star review and share a comment. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on taking another step to create a financially free life you love. If you're not sure about your financial future, or that it's in order, or you are ready to stop worrying about money, or possibly the fear of becoming a bag lady, ending up broke in retirement, or you simply are ready to know your financial house is in order so that you can have a bright financial future, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. And that doesn't stand for non-sufficient funds. It stands for Next Step Finance. It's the next best step of what you need to do so you can avoid an NSF notice in your future. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. The number of women who were not broke or poor while working or married is staggering. The entire mission of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast is to ensure you have the information for you, your family, your friends, anyone who's willing to listen to it and apply it so that you can create a financially free life you love. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Until our next episode, take one action that will help you create a financially free life you love. I'm Annette Ba'u, your host. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.